just because it helps us with questions and everything like that. But I am ready to get started. I don't know about y'all, but I am ready. It has been one of those days. It's been one of those weeks, and it's only Tuesday. So we're gonna press on. They happen, people. They happen. All right. So we're gonna start with, I know we talked in the training about substance abuse and different things like that. So I want to highlight a video here. This is very old, again, because it is part of that national CASA curriculum. You have to remember that they take a while. They take them, and then they take a while, and everything like that. So this is from quite a while ago. You'll tell by the hairstyles and the clothes styles that we are talking about a dated thing right now. But the facts of the matter are still valid. So we're going to go ahead. As always, if you can't hear it, somebody just raise a hand and I will make an adjustment. All right, pay close attention. We will be chatting about some of the things they said. Well, there we go.
Good Sunday evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Beth Dixon. Tonight, a very special report from Color 8's Greg Lamont, saving kids, children of addicts.
In 2014, 400,000 children in this country were reported to be living in foster homes. According to the U.S. Justice Department, as much as 80% of them came from alcohol and drug-addicted homes. Can you imagine? 80%? The story we never seem to hear is the impact that drug addiction has on the children, from the children, when they're children. Tonight, a local success story, a family ripped apart by drugs and the effort being made to bring them back together.
Jason Ramirez is 12 years old. Friends and family call him J2 because his father's name is also Jason. And this very precocious girl is Jason's 11-year-old sister, Zaya. Zaya says boys are icky. J2 says he's already had a couple of girlfriends. Ah, the wishful thinking of young boys. J2 says he's been skateboarding for 4 years, and you know what? He's got the scrapes on his legs to prove it. Zaya likes to show off her gymnastic skills, and she is really good. She's smart, too. Says she makes mostly A's. J2 says he's doing okay in school. Folks, that's pure boy code for I'm not making A's. These are kids who proudly display their excellent artistic skills. Clearly, these two love and trust each other. They love their mom and sure seem to be enjoying life, don't they? Hard to imagine when you consider just 2 years ago, life for these two youngsters was a living hell.
There was this long period of time where I was scared of, like, everything.
They never hurt me, but they hurt each other. They never hurt me.
What did you think about when they hurt each other?
I thought it was scary. Because my dad's humongous and my mom's tiny. So she couldn't really do anything, and I thought it was super scary. Because sometimes she would run into our room and hide herself. But it would, like, freak me out, and me and my brother would start crying because it scared us.
Yeah, a lot of fighting happened in that house. Like, my dad always hit my mom, and yeah. My oldest sister was really scared, but it didn't really affect me because I thought that was normal.
And then there were the drugs. J2 and Zaya's mom, Alicia, was addicted to pills, booze, and methamphetamine. And the impact her addiction had on her children was dark and very disturbing.
Well, it depended on if I had enough drugs or not. You know, like if I didn't, it was miserable. You know, I was always screaming and yelling and, you know, making the kids do everything. I mean, it really depended on what I was using at the time. Like if it was meth, I mean, I was numb to everything. Like I didn't care what they did. I didn't care if they were eating or, you know, what they were playing with or anything. You know, I would be like stuck on my phone or you know, just stupid things. And if I was on pills, I would be like cleaning and, you know, I got a lot of stuff done, you know, but being not able to have pills, if I didn't have them, it was the worst sickness ever, you know, and then I would just get mean and ugly towards them.
She was there with us, but she wasn't. It's like she's there with us, sitting next to us, but she's not in our head. She's not with us in our heart.
In 2013, Alicia and her children were living with Alicia's mother and grandmother. That's where her drug use came to the attention of authorities. She had another child who tested positive for meth and pills. In order to keep her children, she was told she'd have to live in a second chance sober living home. She went to the Center for Children and Families, but she just couldn't stop using.
Me and my little sister were coloring, and like my older sister, she looked outside and my mom was crying, and then she came back inside, and then the caseworker said that we had to leave for a while and go with someone we didn't know. Yeah, it was pretty sad.
Her addiction led her children to being placed in foster homes as many as 3 times. Just 9 and 10 years old, suddenly ripped from their mama, taken to a strange home, not knowing how long they'd be there, wondering whether they'd ever see their mom again, and now living with people they had never before seen.
About 30 minutes to get me into the car, 45 minutes, because I didn't want to leave.
It was scary. Like, you just didn't want to be there. You think like you're gonna stay there for one day, and then you end up staying for like a year. It's not fun.
I had to cry myself to sleep. I didn't like it. I was scared because I'm like, I don't know her. What if she does something bad? And I kind of let it. But then after a while, you get to know her, and they're actually pretty cool people. But it just feels weird without your mom because you hardly get to see her. And most kids are like, kind of say that their life's tough when they kind of have everything in place and they have a mom, they have a dad, when most kids don't even have their mom or their dad or nobody with them. So I think that it was pretty hard for me and my brother.
Alicia says she would stop using, at least long enough to regain custody of her children, promise the kids she would never use again, and then soon after, go right back at it.
Angry at mom?
Very angry and then sad and upset because we wanted to be a family.
Well, when I was like 10, I didn't really even know what was going on. I was just mad at her for using drugs and not hanging out with us or talking to us.
I had no idea where I was going because I kept moving back and forth. But my brother only went to 2 foster homes. I went to 3.
The first time I had to tell them, you know, you're going to foster care, you know, and when I think about when I left them, when I took them all to do school and daycares and I just didn't come back and pick them up, you know, that, I'm stuck with that for the rest of my life, you know, that decision I made, and every time I think about it, it hurts, you know, it doesn't really go away.
Clearly, Alicia was speeding down a path toward losing her kids forever and, quite possibly, her own life. But a strange and rather ironic twist of fate occurred in the blink of an eye. A drug and alcohol-induced near-fatal traffic accident changed everything.
Yeah, like I had gotten a bad wreck, a really bad wreck, and like I almost died. And after that is when I have not used since and thought about it so much differently, you know? So it kind of scared me straight.
Working with Dr. Brenda Roche at the Center for Children and Families, Alicia and her children began taking steps toward a life none ever knew existed. Keep in mind, Alicia started partying when she was a young teenager and even did drugs with her own mom. The road back would not be easy. Roche says when the therapy began, the children were filled with fear, a fear that translated into deep anger.
They're angry at the department, so they're angry at CPS for taking them away from their parents. They're angry at us often in the beginning because we're asking them to talk about things they don't want to talk about and that they're afraid to talk about. They're angry at their mom and dad. They're angry at the world, and oftentimes they're angry at God.
Bottom line, the children were completely traumatized.
Many of our kids are functioning from post-traumatic stress disorder, yes. And a lot of times it's due to the witnessing of domestic violence, and then we add another layer on it of when they're having to be separated from their parent. And so now they have chronic post-traumatic stress disorder with multiple different situations.
Do you feel like you've damaged your children?
I do. But I feel like what I'm doing now is just fixing it, you know? I mean, what else can I do besides, you know, trying to make it better?
Here at the Center for Children and Families, the therapists work with the entire family to provide counseling and parenting skills, among a host of other services. But the primary focus is always on the children.
Every decision we make is filtered through the question, what's in the best interest of the child? So that in case parents can't be successful in parenting, that the children would be better prepared to live successfully in a foster placement, and we hope an adoptive placement or maybe a kin placement. But all the while investing in them ensures that whatever that outcome for the adults in their lives, these kids have the skills that they need to be successful in their own life, and hoping that in those families that have had generations of trauma, generations of substance abuse, incarceration, mental health issues, whatever that might be for them, that we would be able to break that cycle with that child or those children so that they can go on and have then healthy, successful children.
Being with Mom before was like, you didn't get any attention, but now she tries to care for all of her kids and at one time, and it's way better than before.
It's crazy that it's actually happened, you know? Like, I never thought in a million years I could feel like this good about being sober.
And you don't even have to ask the kids. Their faces pretty much tell the story of their own happiness. But it is a cautious happiness. It has to be when it comes to addiction.
The next time she uses, we don't ever get to live with her again. That's what the people say.
So you live with that fear?
Pretty much.
Some great news to report. Alicia is zeroing in on 2 years of sobriety. Way to go, Alicia. The moral to this story, ladies and gentlemen, is quite clear. If you or someone you know is living in a drug-addicted home, get help before it...
Okay, we're gonna stop there. I would like to hear everybody's impressions, reactions. Boy, Cheryl didn't even say a word, and she said a lot with just that time.
I always say it with my face. I hope that I would like to know where they're at today. It's awesome that they were given the resources, but I think what we do is we drop them probably too fast.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and I like the little boy says, you know, but it didn't affect me, you know, my sister, but it didn't affect me, but obviously we know it did.
That is one of the lines that I always pick to talk about. So I'm glad you mentioned it. Yes. Yeah. I believe this was 2015 when the news clip was actually taken. And we don't have a follow-up on how the family did. So I apologize for that, but I don't know. Anybody else have anything strike them? Go ahead.
Well,
Barbara.
what struck me is that they don't mention the dad. I don't know whether he just dropped out, and they didn't ask any questions, but there must be some feelings there about him. And you know, the fact it seems like they don't have any contact with him. So that's a whole other
Yeah.
issue.
That is, you're right. They don't mention the dad. He's not in any of the video. We don't know what happened with the dad. It's a question mark. And that
Can you hear
that
me?
can change. Hey, Alex.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if you were done or not.
You're good.
I was gonna say I went through this training back in 2021 when I did an internship with with Douglas County CASA. And this is one of the only videos so far that I truly remember every detail of it. Just because I think the interviews with the children are very impactful. They seem like we've read a lot about, these children seem very mature for their age. And also it kind of struck me, the last video we saw, I can't remember who the adult was, but they were in a truck with the kid and they were kind of talking, real talk, like this is what's going to happen if your mom doesn't do this. And I think that's an important kind of conversation I want to bring up. Like maybe at some point is how much do the kids, like how is that for children, to know the real legal outcomes and spoken to, that honestly, because he has that fear hanging over his head, okay, next time my mom uses it, I'll never live with her again. That's a scary feeling to live with for years and years, It won't stop until he's 18. So.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about that one too. That's the other quote that I always pull out of here. Nishan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I didn't.
Okay. All right. A couple of things. Barbara actually mentioned one. The other thing I want to point you to that you may not have realized is 2 of the children aren't there. There was an older sister and a younger brother. They were not reintegrated for whatever reason. Now, maybe they went with their father. Maybe they could have had 2 different fathers. They might be with the father. I don't know. We don't know the specifics. But I point that out because it's not just that they don't have their dad. They're missing 2 siblings. Let's go back to what was mentioned before, and I believe it was Cheryl. I'm going to give you the quote from Jay. It was scary, but it didn't affect me. I thought it was normal. Did anybody get the impression that that didn't affect Jay?
No.
Yeah, I didn't get that impression either. And that is true, which is one of the reasons why I always like to bring it in here with domestic violence. It is normal for them. There is a sense of this is my normal. However, through television or movies or streaming or videos of whatever sort, and relationships with friends at schools and things like that, they do know that their household is not like anybody else's. He knew that that's not what it was like in his friend's house. So although it's normal for him, he knows it's not normal overall. That's one thing. And that is really, kids do not realize or want to admit how much something like that affects them. The other thing I always like to stop and chat about here a little bit is what Alex brought up. And that's the quote that goes, the next time she uses, we don't ever get to live with her again. So you live with that fear. Pretty much. I want to give whatever social worker or whatever adult all the grace that I can. They probably were not thinking that this was going to be a successful reintegration. They were probably trying not to pin that child's hope on this was going to be forever. What they ended up doing is introducing more trauma. Because every time that mom is 5 minutes late picking up her child, every time she runs into the normal stuff, a flat tire or a delay, or, around here it's construction season, so traffic, those children are immediately going to Is she using again? Was she in another car accident? Am I ever going to go home again? Am I going back into foster care? And they are being re-traumatized by that. So in light of what Alex was saying, we want to be really, really careful. First of all, that's a social worker job, not a CASA advocate job. They're the ones that are responsible for preparing for the kids, whether or not, you know, parental rights look like they might be terminated. We might have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. And most of the time it's the good part where it's going to be reintegration, but there are certain cases where reintegration is just no longer going to be a viable option. I can tell you that I always want to be surprised, but about 1 out of every 100 cases, maybe one a little more than that, I look at the case, I sit in court, and in my brain, I go, I don't think this family is going to be able to be reintegrated. Usually because it's such significant and severe abuse that there's so much to overcome. Now, I have happily been wrong a couple of times, which is why I want to be wrong in those situations. I want the success story. But I'm also an advocate, like Cheryl was saying earlier, I am always an advocate, but let's not close the case too soon. Let's make sure everything's really stable. Let's just do a monitor where they're not having to come to court all the time, but there's still some resources in place in case they struggle. To get back to the other point, though, we do not want to introduce more trauma into the children's lives. So it's really a hard line because in certain circumstances, you know that that's what the child wants, but you know that that's not in their best interest, and it can be really difficult. Typically, I will tell you, when Spitfire, my 7-year-old, was asking me different questions, she did not want to be reintegrated because she wanted to go to her grandparents' house and live with her brothers. I didn't tell her anything one way or another. I left that to the social worker. And when she would ask me, I was really honest, and I would be like, Spitfire, I can't tell you. First of all, I don't know for sure until the judge makes her official decision. Right now, she's gathering information. She's trying to make decisions. She's trying to give everybody a chance to make this work, where it'll be safe for you to go home. No one truly knows what the judge is going to do until the judge does it. I was really honest, even at 7 with her. Once we had made it through the termination of parental rights, that is when typically the social workers will have the therapists help the children understand, and the social workers will typically leave it to the therapists to break the news, although they may be there in that therapy session. I have been asked as a CASA to be in there in that therapy session as well, so that there's a lot of really good supports for the child, but we leave it to the therapist a lot of times how the best way to talk to that child about that is. Does that help answer your question, Alex, of when and what?
Yes, that works.
Okay. Yeah, it's so difficult. I mean, I've had a couple of really significant, severe abuse cases that I took on personally. Typically, the county attorney would turn to me and like, no, you need to take this case, because I was the director, but I was the most experienced. And I mean, one of them we were able to work reintegration. It was with the other parent, but it was still reintegration. And another one, it wasn't going to happen because mom was going to prison for a long, long time. I think she got sentenced to like 28 years without parole. So that'll give you an idea of how severe it was. Okay. We are going to talk about Shannon's story. Remind me, it's been a long day. Remind me, did you all read anything about Sharon's story? Is this the first time you're hearing about it?
This is the first time.
Yeah.
Perfect.
First time.
Okay, that's okay. We can do that. All right. So Shannon's story. Here's our brief little synopsis. Shannon was removed from her mother, Katrina's custody for drunk driving when Shannon, the little one, was 1 year old. Shannon was placed in foster care with Nathan and Marie for 16 months. So we're about 28 months old at this point. So a little over 2. Katrina, mom, successfully completed de-addiction treatment. Mom successfully completed rehabilitation and alcohol rehabilitation treatment. The foster parents helped support mom, helped her furnish an apartment. They facilitate church visits, very active in helping mom be successful. Shannon was returned to her mama at 28 months old. A little more than a year later, so we're going to say 38, so 39, 40 months old. So we're in that like 3.5, almost 4-year-old stage. A little more than a year after Shannon was replaced back with her mom, and that case would have been closed. Mom relapsed and was transported to the emergency room. Now, I want to add a little bit more here. Mom, before she went to the emergency room, called Nathan and Marie, the foster parents, and asked them to come pick up Shannon and take care of her while mom went to the emergency room. Another same case was opened. Mom successfully completed treatment again. Now, here we go. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. And I know it's not a lot of information, but sometimes we come into a case and there's not a lot of information before we are reaching a really big hearing. And I know it doesn't seem like fun, but sometimes this happens and we want you to kind of get used to that. Okay, what do I want to focus on? So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. There'll be 2 in each. First thing, I want each room to decide, should mom's rights be terminated so that the foster parents could adopt, or should we reintegrate with mom again? Okay. Additionally, so I want you guys to come up with what your opinion is first. Additionally, I will pop in each room about 2 minutes in, and I'm going to give you a side to argue. I would like for you, that team, to use more time and then decide. If I say, okay, I want you to give me the reasons why we should terminate parental rights, or I'm going to pop into the other room and I'm going to say, I want you to give me the reasons or the recommendations for the reasons why we should reintegrate with mom again. Okay. And part of this, I will tell you, is when this new training came, the directors and everyone across the state went to the same training, and we were literally randomly split up and put on 2 teams. And there were a lot of discussion because we didn't like what was assigned to us. That's not how we would have done it. But you have to almost get used to being able to think about it both sides. And this is a really good experience and way to do that. And then we're going to come back. And let's see, I can get this. So we're going to come back and we're going to discuss it all before we move on. Anybody unclear? Anybody want me to go over anything before I put you in the rooms? Or Zoom does, because I have it to do randomly. Okay. Y'all can join your room now.
It's like, what do you do? You know, like I said, I in one hand, I'm like, take the child, put her in a better situation, but then I'm like, okay, the mom is working somewhat. Yes, she relapsed, but a whole year, I don't know, depending on how long she was on the drugs and things like that. So I don't know.
All right,
It's
you
just,
ready? I'm gonna
yeah.
jump in for 1 second.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the case to argue in favor of termination of parental rights.
Oh.
Okay, great.
Now I'm
All
telling
right.
you, that's the one they put me on too. So just don't feel bad. But
Got
it
you.
doesn't have to be y'all's personal opinion, okay? Just
Okay.
keep that in mind. You're just making an argument.
Got
I'm,
you.
yeah. Okay.
All right.
Mm. Oh yay.
Okay, this is just so interesting because I feel like they've made this decision really quickly in this case. Like I was reading a case today where mom's going through treatment and relapses, like reintegration failed 3 different times, but the case went over like 4 to 5 years. So she had a lot of time and a lot of failures before they've even gotten to a point in the case of termination and even deciding that adoption could be an option, you know? So
Here
this
is
seems quick.
where, yeah, here is where in real life, I will say every case is going to be a little bit different. You're going to have to read it. But I know when it comes to statutes, they start to look at time in the home versus time out of the home.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to join the other room.
Okay. Do we have to go now?
No,
Oh, no,
you
you
guys
bring us
have,
back.
I'm going to give you 5 minutes after I'm going to finish in their room and let them know. And then I'm going to give you all 5 minutes. So you've got some
Okay.
time. All right.
Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you.
Seems like what'd she say?
It's because I popped into the room. So what we're doing right now when we chat is about to be recorded. So what I want to tell you is this. I am going to assign you to argue that no, we should reintegrate with mom.
Okay.
Okay. It doesn't have to be your personal opinion, but that's the side that I'm going to give you to make the argument for. All right. I'm going to figure out how to leave this room without shutting the system down. And I'm going to also say, once I do that, I'm setting a timer for 5 minutes so y'all can kind of have some arguments. Try to have at least 3. 3 is a good number of reasons why you think reintegration would be a good idea.
Okay.
All right. See if I can do this. Go ahead.
Well, let's see. We talked about
It's kind of nice when you just get to make the decision for us.
Is it easier?
Yeah, it's so easy.
You're like, this is what I need to do. Yeah, the
I
pressure
think
is
it's a really good brainstorming technique because as soon as you're forced to pick one, you start really, you really decide your answer. Like my roommates and I, when we decide for a movie night, we'll make a spinner wheel with different movies on it. And like, we're all like, yeah, I'd watch that. And once it lands on one, we can kind of tell like, no, we actually don't want to watch that film. So once it makes the decision for you, you really know your own answer. So
yeah,
that was really helpful.
I'm glad. It's one of those exercises. Welcome back, everybody.
All right.
Alex and I were just chatting. She said it was helpful to actually know which side to argue because then you could look through it with a very specific lens in mind. And it was easier to kind of like, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on. Whereas before you were kind of weighing it back and forth. That is one of the purposes of the exercise. The other thing is to remember you always have to be able to see both sides in this case. And so Cheryl and Barbara first. Poor Lori. Lori's having a tough time tonight. Cheryl and Barbara, what did you all decide kind of together personally? What was your personal preference in this?
Well, before you gave us the thing, we were kind of saying to send her back, that the mother had done, she relapsed, but she called them to keep the child safe, and she went to the treatment again. And so, she needs to have the chance again.
Yeah,
the
relapse
child needs to go home. Yeah.
Relapse is a part of recovery. That is, especially with alcoholism. Okay, so you two were tasked with making a case for reintegration. So what were your 3 points? What were your 3 main reasons?
Well, Mom was apparently able to sustain a year of reintegration with that child. So it's a solid year is a good length of time. And just because she relapses, then she maybe will go another year or another 2 years. And that's a good solid length of time. We don't know whether she may have been drinking on the sly, or whether this had just happened.
Right.
I mean, usually they're kind of going downhill for a while. So maybe a year is, but I mean, from all we know, she had her for a year, and I think it depends on how that year went. But as far as we know, it went just fine.
Okay.
And I just don't know how you're going to find the mother unfit at this point. I mean, that's bottom line.
Yep.
And just because they have a better opportunity elsewhere, it is not a reason to terminate.
Absolutely.
So I just don't think Mom's unfit. I don't know how you would.
Those are all great reasons. She did reach out in the emergency. And I always want to add that because this used to be one of the case ones from earlier. And so I knew that piece of information was extra and it's not included on this slide, but I think it's an important part. Mom went a year and it could have been, she just had a bad day, thought she was over it, as many alcoholics do, thought they were cured and that they could have one drink, and that one drink led to a relapse. But she also took care of her child and put her child in a safe place while she went to take care of. So those are all really great reasons to reintegrate back. All right, Alex and Nishan. First of all, where inquiring minds want to know, what were you two thinking? Reintegration, termination?
So I will start. I was actually like really conflicted, like back and forth, because when you think about, okay, yeah, you say Mom was good for a year. you never know if she was still doing it and just didn't get caught. And then this last time, we just went too far. And she didn't have, she couldn't come back from it because she was so far. So at first, the front of my mind was like, no, send her to the foster parents. Because one, the foster parents, obviously she had a good support, things like that. Right. Then I was like, well, mom did, she did good for a year. So then I was kind of feeling sorry for mom a little bit. And then you came in and was like, okay, you guys need to argue the fact of, taking the child all the way out, like, removing the child, canceling rights and everything like that. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go with the first part of my mind, which was saying to go ahead and, terminate the rights, because like I said, whether it's a year, whether it's 10 years, at some point in time, how did mom get back to that point? What was going on? And then now what's happening is the daughter is now, her life is going to be turned upside down again, because even though she's going to that support system, she's going to be removed from mom's care anyways. So now it's like, okay, she knows something is wrong. And then it takes her back to, why was she sent to the foster care system in the first place? Because mom was having issues. So that's my part. Alex has, I think, another part, but that's just kind of where I was coming from.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a little conflicted, but I was mostly leaning towards reintegration, just because I felt like, mom is clearly, like you guys said, she was showing signs of, she was clearly trying to do what was best. And I think one of the things that was brought up in the substance abuse training is to look at these people, this isn't something they're choosing to do. This is an addiction. It's almost like a disease, and it is happening to them. Obviously there's things that they can do, and I think that she was doing them. But obviously we don't know all the details. I wish I could read through the whole court case. But when we had to make the decision, I think, should we go ahead? Did we say our 3 things now?
Yep, go ahead and say your 3 things now.
So my piece I can bring up was that clearly, if parental rights were terminated, there is a fantastic option for an adoption placement that has a great working relationship with mom and has shown her a lot of support in the past. So if obviously parental rights were terminated, hopefully there would be continued visitations, lots of, interactions, going and doing things together, lots of photos sent to mom. They seem to be they want the best for her as well. Yeah, and if you want to finish up, Sean.
I'm trying to remember what I said. Like I said, I think for me, it would just be the fact of the child having stability. I think going to the foster parents where she's already been and seemed, I don't know the full thing, but may have been doing well, especially if they, created that relationship with mom as well. So I think my thing would be she would have more stability there and be able to simply, flourish and not be tossed around.
Yep.
My concern is the age of the child. When she was removed the first time, I think she thinks of these foster parents, one's mom and one's dad. And when she's put back home, it's like, who's this? Now, I'm assuming they did some visitation and whatnot, but I think the foster parents would have to be careful. And I don't know what you do if they start calling you mom and dad. But then at that young age, then she's, put back with mom. And, to be out of home for that long at that age, that's a long time.
And that's why we have the statute that's 15 of the last 22 months. That is one of the reasons. Because Because if a child has been in out of home placement for 15 of the last 22 months, the statute in the state of Kansas currently reads that there is a presumption of unfitness of the parent.
So do you mean like, so if they go to foster care
Mhm.
and they're in foster care for 15 months?
15 of the last 22 months, yes.
Oh, okay, okay. So altogether it's 22 months.
Well, if you have, let me flip back a slide.
So that's surprising because you said like it's federal family first. And
Right.
truly, I'm thinking 15 months isn't really that long.
Well,
I mean,
remember, sorry,
Okay.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The federal family first legislation came in after our statute. And our statute says that it's a presumption of unfitness. It doesn't say that you have to automatically go in and terminate parental rights.
Oh, okay.
And many of our courts will not terminate just because of that. But there is a presumption of unfitness if the child has not been returned to the home or reintegrated. So when the child came in at 1 year of age,
Right.
she was in foster care with this foster family for 16 months. When she came out, she had been in out-of-home placement for more than 15 of the last 22 months. There was a presumption of unfitness at that time. Some lawyers will argue that it carries forward. Many lawyers will argue that it does not. It restarted when we opened the new case. That case closed, which is why I was really clear in saying that case closed and they opened a new case here. I think what you're doing is you're raising amazing questions both sides. I will tell you that we had a room full of the state trainers and the directors. And man, we were going back and forth. Now, we did have a couple of people in there like I could never recommend. We had one person who literally told the room, I could never recommend termination of parental rights ever under any circumstances. And that's when we kind of go like, you can't be completely extreme. Like there's got to be that one tiny exception. It's not a big exception, but it has to be there for the safety of the child. But we were able to go back and forth. Now, I will tell you, we argued things like what you have brought up. Relapse is a part of recovery. Mom took care of the child. But on the other hand, this child has now spent more of her life with the foster parents. Because even she was with mom was not doing it all on her own. She was doing it with the help and care and attention of the foster parents. I mean, kudos to the foster parents for really supporting that family. Here, when the foster parents have a child, they always get first option to get that child back if the child comes back into the system, if they're willing to take it, because it's less traumatic for the children, and they immediately took care of that child. I don't know. I think if you pushed me on this one, I'm going to say reintegrate with mom again. But I think if it comes up again in the next 15 to 18 months, I might come back with maybe we need to consider, while the child is really still young, we need to consider termination of parental rights. Or I would almost want to see if we could advocate, not we specifically as CASA, but if the court could advocate for maybe a permanent guardianship. That leaves mom's rights intact, but it gives all parental decision-making to the foster parents. Kind of like a split the middle sort of a thing, because the child is going to need stability. The child is almost 4. We are talking preschool and kindergarten and school. And the older the child gets, the harder, the more of a potential trauma there is with this push and pull. And I'm with mom, I'm with the foster parents. So I don't know. I think at this point, if you pushed me, I would still say reintegration. But if it happened again, that's where I'm going to start to lean heavier on this child needs permanency. And we've already played this game. This is the 3rd time. If that makes sense. Questions? So this is a challenging exercise. I applaud how well you all did with it. There's a reason though, now you can kind of understand being able to think about what would I do, and when it's really back and forth. And sometimes as a CASA volunteer advocate, you're not ready to make that official decision which way to go. That's okay. You don't have to, unless you're facing a permanency hearing, or if it is what we call a viability hearing, or which is a hearing to determine if reintegration is a viable option or not. Those two kinds of hearings, when you write your report for those hearings, the judge is really looking to make those kind of permanency decisions. And so it's helpful. You could say in your concerns, CASA is concerned because CASA is struggling because this, and this on one side and this on the other side. That's okay to have that struggle in the concerns, because you're backing it up with because remember, first of all, it's in the concern. So we're not fact-based. This is their opinion. This is your gut reaction. But it also kind of gives the judge different ways to weigh, I see this, why they would think this, and I can see why they would be concerned about that. It gives them more information on where you are. Okay. So I do want to touch on stereotypes. I want everybody really quickly, I mean, stereotypes are very rigid. They're very inflexible. One of the funny things is people tend to hold on to them no matter how much evidence that you give to the contrary. It's for whatever reason, not a very logical thing. They do have a tendency to limit people's perspective. There are perpetuations of myths and generalizations about a particular group. But the biggest thing is, I know I said in training, but I want to emphasize it again, they can be positive or negative. So now I am going to say, I want each of you to think of one possibly positive stereotype, and then you can just share it.
Every stereotype I'm thinking of is a double-edged sword, so I don't know what to say.
Just think of one that most people would
oh my
consider
goodness.
positive.
Well, my first one was that, well, let me keep thinking.
Okay.
Poor people are lazy.
Oh, that's a negative.
Okay.
Oh, you wanted a positive one?
A positive one.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know whether to applaud you or be frustrated by the fact that you guys are having a hard time with stereotypes. I think I'm just going to choose to applaud, but let me give you a couple, okay? And then you guys will get it maybe. Asian people are good at math.
Oh, okay.
Black people play amazing basketball. Or the Black people are good at sports. Hispanic people have families that are always super, super close. These are positive things. I mean, to be good at sports is a good thing. To be good at math is a really good thing. To have close family relationships is an amazing thing. But it's still a stereotype, because if you go up to that Asian what's the old one from when I was growing up? Japanese people take a lot of pictures, you know? And if you see someone, a Japanese person, and like, oh, so what do you take pictures of? And they look at you like, I'm not a photographer. You're perpetuating a myth. But I do it because I want to make sure people are thinking they can sound really nice. It sounds good for you to think that that person's really good at computers or really good at science. Or
that, Jewish people are always rich.
Yeah.
Always make money or always have money. Is that?
Yeah, no. Indian people make good doctors.
Mm.
You know, there are a lot of myths, and they sound like a positive thing, but they are still stereotypes. So we need to be aware of them. So like I
Black
said,
people are good dancers.
see, now you're getting it. Now they're coming.
But they are.
And we have fun with it, but they're a stereotype because not everyone fits the mold.
Right.
Not everybody fits the mold, and we don't want to generalize people like that. So this is
Yeah.
normally a fun little exercise after a couple of serious things. But I'm gonna applaud the fact that this was a challenge for you, and I'm gonna choose that path. All right.
Oh,
I love it. All right, the Lavender case. Now, you all should have read just a little blurb about the Lavender Bass case. It would have been just like the briefest introduction. It would have been in the training. Now, what you do have are some other pages that we'll get to in a minute. Don't peek at them again. No peeking, people. No peeking. All right. So I'm going to just do this quick little review. And 3 weeks ago, Lavender Bass, who's 6 years old, came into care following a complaint. The DCF investigator located the mother and child behind the bar where the mom was employed.
oh yeah.
Is it coming? Reminding you now? Okay. Mom, Susan Mailer, was found passed out drunk, sleeping in her parked car. A little aside, in some states, they can still be charged as DUI or DWI. In other states, you cannot. Lavender was sitting in the shade of a nearby tree, waiting for her mom to wake up and take her home. The police were called, and obviously they woke mom up, and mom was not in the best of moods because mom was arrested for public drunkenness. Okay. Lavender was placed in foster care with Bonnie Matthews. As you'll recall, that was because the maternal aunt and the maternal grandmother where Lavender and mom live would not obey the court order for the no contact except during visitation, supervised visitation for mom. They're like, it's her house. So Susan mom has a criminal record that has some violent acts in it in the past. Mom had mom had been in a couple physical fights in a bar where she's employed. Mom has also been arrested for dealing marijuana and was at one time caught huffing inhalants. Okay, everybody clear? Everybody remember the story now? All right.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
So what did you say the reason was that she was placed? On what I'm reading, it says because no one was home that day. Was there something
Well,
I
I could
missed?
have been spouting something. I will
That's
say
hard.
that you would have the knowledge when you were assigned to the case that they may not have been home that day, but also they refused to keep mom out of the home or
Okay.
restrict access.
Okay.
All right. Are we ready? Because we're going to play our game again. So I'm going to give you your options. And like last time, I may hold some back until a certain point in time in the case. So your options are to speak with the caseworker, the child and the foster mom, they're the same one, potentially dad, or the maternal aunt or the maternal grandma. I will say that if you try and get a hold of mom first, you're not going to be able to get a hold of her right now, which is why she's not in here. I will bring her in at the appropriate time.
My first thought is because we don't have too many details about any of these other family members to go to the foster placement and speak with them. But if anyone has other thoughts.
That's Alex's vote. What is everybody else thinking? What's your gut reaction? Who should you speak to first?
I was that or the caseworker. It was between those two.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree with Alex. And then, like Cheryl said, the caseworker. Yeah.
What about you, Barbara?
I'd go to the caseworker just about in every instance. I mean,
You
they're
wanna-
the ones that are charged to know what's going on, why the child came into custody, what they're required to do by law in terms of a lot of things. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but that's a starting point.
Right. I would understand that. Okay. So I think you got voted. So we're going to the foster mom first, and then we're going to immediately go with Barbara's number one choice, which is the caseworker. All right. I am about to share the screen. Before I do that, is anybody going to be reading off the screen tonight?
I am.
Okay.
I didn't.
Barbara, just let me know when to slide it down.
Okay.
All right. Let me go here. Okay.
Okay.
So go ahead and read this one.
Okay. Can you?
Let me know when you finish.
Okay.
And there you go. There's the rest of it.
Okay. Is that the end? How does it feel to visit with this child?
Yep. And again, we're not going to be doing their questions. Okay, has everybody finished reading? All right, thoughts, reactions, questions, concerns?
I don't have any initial concerns about the placement. From what we were told, she seems very suitable. Like she knows what she's doing. She has enough time to care for Lavender. And that's even more concerning that Lavender isn't, opening up. Because clearly this is a placement that's putting a lot of care and thought into that. And so I agree with her recommendation to get some counseling. And that's pretty much the only thing I took from it, other than that Lavender, clearly she mentioned her mom, grandma, and aunt. So she has a support system that she's missing.
Yeah.
I think we need to find out if her behavior in not being present is something more than a counseling issue.
Okay.
If she's, I don't know, autistic or an alcohol syndrome baby, I don't know.
Right.
And so you'd want to find out if there is some medical history with her.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, y'all are bringing up great things. Now we're look away from the screen for a second. I'm going to come all the way back up. There we go. And then we're going to the very, very first page, which is the caseworker. So Barbara, just let me know.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. All right, everybody. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
Are they cooking meth?
Oh, yeah. What are they doing? And then like the part that sticks out to me was like the aunt and the grandma are talking about they're not. I guess the mom is not supposed to be around the daughter or around Lavender, but they're saying they're not going to ban her from the house. So if she had some sense of normalcy to go or to see the grandma and the aunt, it's going to be hard for the courts to say, oh, yeah, that's fine, because they can't trust that the mom is never going to be around her. So I think that puts Lavender, the child, in a very uncomfortable situation because she may want to see grandma and aunt, but because they're kind of stuck in their ways, I'll say it like that, they kind of put her in a bad situation, even more worse situation than she's already in.
Yeah, and let me just jump in for a second here. I will tell you one of the reasons why this could potentially still happen right now in Kansas is typically you're not gonna, I mean, they're gonna go with supervised visitation first, but even if they were going with like a monitored visit or something else with mom, they haven't been able to get a hold of mom is part of the problem. But if they put the child in the home and mom moves back in, that's effectively reintegration, and that creates issues across the line because then you've already reintegrated. So then mom has no need to work reintegration, and there's the safety of the child is still an issue and hasn't necessarily been resolved because mom hasn't worked with the agency at all. So that can still happen where they won't place the child at home. Now, what I will tell you is I have a case right now in Geary County, which involves both parents, and they both moved out of the house and grandma moved in just so that it was less stressful for the child, which is amazing and was applauded by the judge because it was less traumatic for the child. Visits are not being held in the home, though, just for that kind of a reason, to make sure. And grandma had to be very clear that she was not going to let them stay overnight or anything like that. So it had to be really clear, but it's easier when, the parents are comfortable enough to speak to the caseworker, because some of this could potentially be resolved and we could potentially move Lavender back. Okay. Other thoughts, questions, and concerns?
It's a concern that the grandmother and aunt are putting themselves first, or the mother first over the child. That's a concern.
Yep.
Do they ever do visits where the grandmother or aunt could go to the foster home and visit her?
In Kansas, you could make that happen. You could make a recommendation that there be visitation. It would just have to be in a neutral place. Like they could go to the foster parent, or they might, if there was a park near where they lived, they could kind of go do that.
Yeah.
I can tell you, my judges would demand that there be some sort of visitation for the child, just for the child's best interest, or the family's best interest too, but especially for the child's best interest.
I had a quick question about visitation, and we may have talked about this before. Can us as CASA, can we be the like the visitation people?
I love that question. No. And I apologize. I went into my old habit of saying visitation. It's family time. It's family time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I apologize
Gotcha,
for that.
okay.
That's on me. No. The OJA, Office of Judicial Administration, prohibits us from being the visitation or the family time supervisor. They will word it as visitation, which is why it goes back and forth in my brain. But we cannot be the supervisor during family time. However, you can be present at a family time. Especially if family time is supervised at an agency office, that's one of my favorite times to do visits in the beginning of a case until they move to, unsupervised or whatever, because they typically will have mom come in, we'll say from 10 to 11. Mom will leave, and then dad will come in from like 11 to 12. Well, I get to see mom alone with the child, how mom and dad interact with each other, dad with the child. And it's really fascinating because I get to kind of talk to everybody and see everybody all at the same time, but I get to see them in unique situations. There's a lot that can be said in reading someone's nonverbal communication at that point. It's also really easy because they're already there, so I'm not taking additional time out of their calendar. I've always gotten the feedback that they appreciated that as well, because they're trying to struggle with so many things that they're trying to do. The fact that they just tacked on an extra 15 minutes, mom stayed 15 minutes late, dad came 15 minutes early, so I kind of got to see. I would still do visits with the child completely separately, but it gave me a great way of looking and then being able to recommendations. Hey, this family interacts great. They're good as parents. They're very attentive. They're doing all this because I can see it for myself. But yes, Office of Judicial Administration prohibits us from supervising family time, AKA visitation.
Why is that though? Like, because we do so much as like all of our recommendations, and we have to be in court for all this stuff. So why do they not want us there? Have they ever said that?
It is part of the contract that DCF makes with the agencies, and so it would be us doing their job. And so they make it really clear to try and keep the line really clear what we're supposed to be doing. The other thing is we are volunteer advocates, and they're getting paid to supervise.
Tracking. Okay, I understand.
Yep. Great question though. I'm really excited that you asked. I just hated I had to say no, because I can tell you so many times that an advocate has asked me, my own advocates has asked me, can I please just facilitate this? Because this would be so helpful for the family. They could visit more often. They could do this. And I always have to be the meanie head that says no.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Your choices are dad, the maternal aunt, and the maternal grandma. Anybody else? Who are we chatting with?
My vote is maternal grandma and
Yeah, grandma.
aunt.
Yeah.
I think we need to figure out, like, if I'm thinking if I'm the CASA going through this case, I'd kind of want to know before my court report what I want to say about mom, even if I don't get a chance to speak with mom because she's not responsive.
Okay.
And I want to know why they are so, like, if there's another reason that they're so adamant about keeping mom within, you know, Lavender's life, I want to hear them out and figure out why.
Alrighty then, we are going to go to, all right, maternal aunt and grandmother, which would be Lee or Leah and Rebecca. First contact. So don't read the second one yet, just the first one.
Is that the end of it? How can the government come and just take our child?
Yep. That is the end of it. Has everybody had a chance to finish?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Alex. Did you have a reaction or question or?
Oh, I was just saying I was done. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No worries. No worries. All right. You know the drill. Questions, concerns, thoughts.
This clears up a lot.
Yeah, I don't trust the mom and the aunt because they're worried about the wrong thing. They're not really worried. They're trying to prove that, say, like, this is a one-time thing and all that. Sometimes it only takes one time. And
Okay,
so
that is-
now it's like, okay, it's that one time. So, but you're still trying to basically make it like make light of it. And when you really think about it, the life of a child or anybody for that matter is important. And so to me, they're making light of it to the point to where it's like not a big deal. And that kind of bothers me. I don't trust them.
Oh,
Okay.
I think I read the wrong thing.
Did you read maternal aunt and grandmother Leah Mailer?
I read
You
the second.
No, skipping ahead. Go ahead and glance over the first one.
Okay.
And then you have to hold your tongue. You can't say things.
I think my first thoughts was that line, "We can deal with the problem. It's a family business, not the government's," answered my question. I agree with Nishan. I don't think I can really trust them at this moment. I almost, even for a brief second, was like, oh, let's recommend, you know, phone conversations with grandma, but we can't trust that mom won't be in the house and try and, you know. Yeah, so that was unfortunate to hear.
Yeah. They are definitely resistant to anything. It's easy to see why the agency was uncomfortable placing with the grandma and aunt. Okay, so how about we chat with dad? Because all this time you're still trying to get a hold of mom and you can't. Are you guys okay with chatting with dad?
Works for me.
All right. I will tell you a couple things. Now, dad's in county lockup. You're never expected to go to court, to go to a jail. That is not something that you have to do. You can if you wish to. If it's like a county, if they're in prison, they are probably not going to be able to be a reintegration option unless they're about to get out. That is one of the things that you have to consider. So you don't have to go. That is not a requirement at that point. Okay. And then I'm going to set this up, Barbara, so I don't have to scroll it. But you just let me know when you're done.
Scroll, please.
Okay.
It's just complicated things.
Life just got a little crazy, didn't it? All right. I know Barbara's reaction. She's like, crap, this just got really complicated. But
Yeah.
how about everybody else? Other reactions? And Cheryl, you still have to hold that secret knowledge secret, okay? Thoughts, reactions, concerns based on this?
Yeah, I'm with Barb. I'm a little thrown. So I'm just
Like, wait, I had it all figured out. I knew, and now
yeah,
nothing's
like
as it is.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
How about you, Alex?
I think that it made me think about the mom and grandma and aunt and how that's another reason why they want to stay so closely connected, because it's a big piece of their culture that we didn't know about until now. So I can really understand why they're so angry with the system for taking a child out of their, family, especially in this instance. So it definitely I have more sympathy for them. It doesn't change what mom did, obviously, but I feel like there's a lot more that we can do as a CASA advocate in the court to represent for her rights, as a Native American citizen.
Absolutely. This really tosses a lot more in. So let's go over a couple of things. I will tell you that under the current ICWA laws, that every child is an ICWA child until proven otherwise. So there's extra hearings, there's extra timing, different things like that. It is also one of those things that a good judge will be asking periodically. I know some judges ask it at every hearing, some just ask it at the big hearings. Your permanency hearings, your adjudication, your temporary custody, termination, those kind of bigger hearings. But I know a lot in my jurisdiction, all but one ask it every time. Do we know is there any change in the ICWA status? If is it a possibility at all? One of the things is this would potentially mean that now we have two different tribes. We need to share that information. Typically, somebody would have looked into this before, but let's say that everybody was very uncooperative as they appeared to be in the beginning. If we find this out along the way, this is where you need to let your CASA staff know immediately, because then they need to let the guardian ad litem and the judge and everything else know immediately. So we have two tribes here. There's two peoples, and the Kanik tribe, and then there's another one. One of the things that we need to do is we need to let the attorneys know, because they need to go through a proper procedure of contacting the tribe to see if the child is enrolled or eligible to be enrolled in a federally recognized Native American tribe. Now, that's a lot of words. The key parts that you need to consider are if the child is eligible, the child or the parents are eligible or enrolled or eligible to be enrolled. But not all tribes are federally recognized. There are over 300. I want to get my numbers right. So there's either 300 federally recognized tribes and over 800 tribes across the nation, or there's 800 that are recognized and there's 300 more across the nation. So there's like hundreds of tribes potentially. They have to choose to be federally recognized. They are not covered under the ICWA laws if they are not a federally recognized tribe. Now, the Cherokee Nation as a whole is not a federally recognized tribe, but many tribes within the Cherokee Nation are federally recognized. So you got to watch it. Just because someone says, oh, I'm a Cherokee, great. Which tribe? Because Cherokee Nation as a whole is not federally recognized. Many tribes within the Cherokee Nation as a whole are federally recognized. This is a big deal in Kansas. We have a lot of Native American descent. Actually, there's a little fallacy for you. It is big everywhere. There's not a state that does not have a significant population of Native American tribes, because they had the whole country and they've moved around, and I recognize that. But there's still a significant number in every state. So we're going to add that element in. Now, I will tell you from experience with ICWA cases that our role does not change. The only thing is we are definitely going to, if there is a tribe involved, we want to obviously have contact with them, want to try and find out and help understand their cultural norms and different things like that. We've talked about that with culture. The other thing is that it's up to the tribe how much they have a say. So if the child is enrolled or eligible to be enrolled in a federally recognized tribe, so let's say that this is an actually ICWA tribe, the tribe can decide to take part in the case and just be another party in the case and have some impact on decisions. The tribe can take over placement and decide the child is going to be placed with them. The child, they could, but allow the case to go on. The tribe can actually take over the entire case if they have a tribal court. Some tribes aren't big enough to have a tribal court, so that is a requirement under the new ICWA laws, according to my latest training. So there's a wide variety. I will tell you, I have had tribes that have just taken part in the hearings. We had one that wanted to, there were 4 children. 2 were 100% full-blooded for the tribe out of Alaska, and 2 were 50%. And they only wanted to take jurisdiction on the 2 children that were 100% because they believed in a quantum and they really wanted to do that. They decided not to do that because then they were worried that might negatively impact the children, and they didn't really have anything. They were a very small tribe, and they didn't have the wherewithal to take care of the children within the tribe and things like that. So they just took part. They can change their minds at any point. They might start as just a party on the case and then take over, or they may take over completely and then let it come back. So once a tribe is involved, a lot more possibilities. I mean, Barbara saying things just got complicated is the biggest understatement you could imagine when it comes to ICWA cases. And we get them frequently. I would also ask you to consider or reconsider what we learned about Lavender and the foster home. She wants to be outside. She's very quiet. She doesn't look the foster mom in the eye. She is very shy. Well, okay. That could be cultural as opposed to autistic. It could be both. So really, we want to make sure. The other thing to consider in a situation like this is if they have a tribal school, she might not have started in a tribal school yet. They might not start till 7 because they don't have to go by the 6-year-old rule that we do for US. Or her birthday might have been such that although she's 6, she hasn't started first grade yet with them because it's a tribal school. Again, tribal school might be held differently. Their culture brings about a lot of different things. So while we think she hasn't adjusted well and she's not used to school and she must not have learned anything, we don't know that. Maybe they might be starting with their tribal things first, the language, their culture, their cultural standards, so many things that they could start before they get into reading, writing, and arithmetic type of learning that we associate with school. So all that needs to now be reassessed and filtered in your brain. And now that I've shaken the box thoroughly, we have 3 options. There is an attorney that would potentially tell you a lot of what I just told you about ICWA cases and different things like that. I'm going to say that you might be able to get a hold of mom, or do you want to go back and talk to the maternal aunt and grandmother?
Mom, let's talk to mom.
All right. Barbara called it. We're going to mom. Okay, here's mom. You just let me know. It's going to be a phone call. So you would have left repeated messages, voicemails wouldn't be returned. You're going to call from a slightly different number. Maybe you were calling on one number and you called it from a different line. And all of a sudden she picked up and you got through. So let me know when to scroll, Barbara.
Okay, scroll.
Barbara is amused. Thank you. All right, everybody, what are we thinking?
Well, she's not taking responsibility for her actions because she's caught up on the fact that they're taking her child, that they always steal our children, and that comes from, I mean, that's the history with them. We did do that to them, so no wonder they can't trust the government.
Absolutely.
She has some childhood trauma that from her mom, that is why the things that she's doing, she doesn't feel like was a bad thing, or she doesn't to her it's not bad, or to her it's not as serious because that's what she went through. Probably to me, it seems like she went through maybe a few times worse than what her daughter is dealing with. So it's like she's dealing with that trauma through the situation, which she doesn't want to deal with that trauma, but it's kind of being thrown in her face. So now she's just having to deal with it.
Yep.
That's a good insight.
There's a lot more to this story than when we first started.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's a pattern in a lot of cases that, parents who end up having their kids taken into custody, they were once taken into custody themselves.
Right.
And so in this case, it seems that for whatever reason, whether it be, just because of her mom, or a blend of cultural practices, or a blend of their location, or all these different things, she wasn't taught clearly, like Nishan said, that these things are wrong. So that was one of the biggest things I picked up. And, my initial thought would be, a parenting class, but then it's like Nishan said, she has a lot of emotions going on right now. This is the first time we were able to connect with her. I don't know how viable of an option that is at the moment, but it was something I was thinking about.
Yep. These are great. Mom, back to the maternal aunt and the grandma one more time.
Sure.
I know Cheryl's dying to get there.
I'm dying to get there.
She's like, oh my goodness gracious. Okay, here's our second contact. Let me know when to scroll.
You don't have to keep a secret anymore.
Nope.
Yay!
Scroll.
There. I think we can all agree that Cheryl did a great job of holding all that in.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I got like 3 big clarifying things in here.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, I'm just going to switch that up so that we go back to the slide, but all right. Thoughts, reactions, concerns, questions?
I guess the first thing, which isn't one of the big ones I noticed, but it was mentioned that the children don't look directly at their mom when they're receiving instructions. I remembered how when we were talking about different cultures, that there are different ways people interact with each other, and it brought me back to seeing, oh, what's her name? What's the kid's name?
Lavender?
Oh, it's Lavender. Yes, thank you. Lavender, in her foster home, and how she was kind of almost disassociative,
Right.
and whether or not all of that shouldn't have been chalked up to a behavior or a mood, and that some of it just may have been how they were taught, or how other kids around her interacted, especially in that environment, because there seems to be a lot going on. So it may have been a huge adjustment to go from, you know, a bunch of kids and no one paying attention to you to now all eyes on me. That would be a really strange feeling.
Especially if you're
And
already a shy little girl. Go ahead, Cheryl.
right. And she doesn't know how to play with herself. She's by herself and there's always lots of kids around. So she doesn't even know what to do. She's very lonely.
Yeah, you have more than one child. The first child learns how to play by themselves. My third child, he has no concept of how to play by himself when he
Right.
was little.
Right.
I mean, he does now, he's 25, but still.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of cultural things that we can now pick up. And that is a very cultural thing, to look someone directly in the eye. In most of the Native American cultures, because there's more than one, it is extraordinarily disrespectful. It is an in-your-face, aggressive. You're starting something. And to not speak unless spoken to, do not answer unless told to answer. Those are also partially cultural, potentially. There are Native American tribes that have those kind of behaviors. We had a outreach coordinator at one point in time who was Native American and spent time on the reservation and everything. And it was fascinating to watch her go through and help do this training, because she would bring a lot of these insights that I'm bringing to you in there and just kind of talk about. The other thing that she always warned me is, she's like, there are certain tribes where you never ask a question of an elder. You have to phrase it differently because a question was aggressive. And so you would be, she'd say, you start saying things like, I'm really concerned that Lavender needs to connect with her people more. And that is hey, how can we help learn more about the culture or get her more involved? But it was you had to be very gentle in your word choice, and you couldn't ask a question and different things like that. And so that's why it's always good to have that cultural understanding.
Could it be a recommendation that Lavender does go back to grandma and aunt, and even, I mean, grandma could take, I mean, it could be a recommendation that she's the guardian, because obviously, I don't know, obviously that's a stereotype, I guess, but it's going to be hard. You can recommend and you can do a lot for Susan, the mother, but it could take years of counseling for her to get over what she got over. Right. And is that really good? You know, we've talked, would that really be good for Lavender to spend all of that time in foster care?
Right.
I think that if for whatever reason, you know, this case is going by like 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, and we don't know where it's at yet, one of the recommendations could be, and I don't have any background with this, but some sort of way for her to be involved with her cultural heritage, not specifically with her family. And I don't know what that looks like. But it's clear that I think it would be really difficult in the same way to get Susan help. It would be very difficult to have Bonnie, the foster care placement. Like you can't recreate her culture within this foster home. You just can't, no matter how much you learn, and no matter how much you talk about or videos you watch, you just can't recreate it. And so trying to find a way to get her that, if it can't be with her family.
So what I would say is keep in mind that it might be the tribe's decision, because we know that Lavender will qualify based on blood quantum, which is important to them. So the tribe may have a say in that. And we need to be mindful and respectful of that. The other thing is, you're right. The foster home can never create the exact same duplicate of the environment. However, this is one where I would have a recommendation for the foster parents to get some cultural training in this, so that she would be able to better understand. Lavender's not being disrespectful. Lavender is not, Lavender looks at life differently because our culture taught her to look at life differently. And maybe having some cultural understanding will help that situation, and they'll be able to grow closer together if she's going to remain in the foster care. Anything else about Lavender's case?
I just think that maybe this is again where we kind of stereotype that we think it's, you know, Lavender was being abused because her mom was drunk and had her there. But I don't know, it's just hard for me. I mean, yeah, she shouldn't have done that, but I believe that Lavender's better off with her grandmother and aunt, I guess.
And that could be a recommendation, that despite what had happened, that it's the best interest for the child to return to the home, and that, you know, try and put some family preservation services or something in the home to help them. I think it would also build a bridge for them realizing, look, we didn't understand everything that was going on.
All right.
Here's where we're coming from, and working together versus them seeing us as the enemy.
Right. Because us taking the child and putting them in foster care isn't, I mean, they're never going to trust that.
No. But, you know, if we could sit down with them and be like, look, I'm going to recommend that Lavender come back to you. I didn't understand. We didn't understand. Here's our situation. This is why they were concerned. I know you don't see it as a big deal, but things are different in each culture. And you can sit there and have a reasonable conversation. And I think you can make some headway, you know, even in just your interpersonal relationship. But yes. Okay, so we're going to take this case and we're going to talk about a few things about writing effective court reports, because ultimately that's what we're going to do. And what I want to focus on today is saying some things appropriately. I do not have a magic Rolodex that tells me how to say everything perfectly, but I have learned there are certain things that we definitely don't want, and I want to share with you that we definitely don't want to do. So I'm going to give you an example of something that we saw in this Lavender Bass case. We want to identify what's wrong with it, and then how would we fix it. So talking about dad, he was busted for pot. Remember, the caseworker said this one. But first of all, what's wrong with it?
Very informal.
What is pot?
Yeah, we got a lot of
What is busted?
Yeah, what busted for a pot?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
What
who
is
is
pot?
he also?
Jargon. Yeah. Who is he? Like, like, I don't know. Was there somebody else there that we didn't know about? Absolutely. So slang, jargon, and pronouns right off the top. So how would we fix this situation? How would we fix this sentence?
Dad's name, or just, yeah, name, and then in parentheses you can say dad was convicted or with marijuana, or of a marijuana charge, something like that.
Yeah. So you
Yeah,
can
I
do
think
it.
it was dealing. Yeah.
Okay, so here's what you can do. You can do it a couple of different ways. Obviously, there's no one size fits all here. The dad was convicted of, and then what are the exact charges he was convicted of? Go ahead, get the criminal charges exactly how they were. Possession of class whatever substance, because typically they won't say marijuana, they'll say some kind of a class substance, at least in the criminal hearings that I've sat in. And that's public information. You'll be able to do your search and you'll be able to find it. And that's it. You could also say dad has was arrested for possession of marijuana. That would also be an accurate fact-based sentence, but we're really clear. So no slang or jargon. All right, you ready for your next one? Mr. Bass has never been a father to Lavender.
Your
Listen. Say that again.
That's an opinion. I mean, we don't, you know,
That's none
because
of
he
our
has
business.
yeah. Well,
sorry.
It may be on, but we just say he hasn't been involved with Lavender, or he hasn't seen her much, but we don't know. I mean, to say never been a father, that means a lot of different things.
Right. And here's where we just really want to state it objectively. Okay. Yeah. And we could even use the fact that the father told the CASA advocate that the father has not, and then whatever he said, seen Lavender very much, or whatever the exact quote was. Then we're quoting dad. This is what he told us. We are quoting dad. That type of thing.
Can we quote that he said mother had moved on by the time she had, you know, Lavender, and was done with me, in quotes, because he said that. Yeah.
You know, and you can always quote what they say. The other thing that you could potentially, because I will say, if he's in county jail, he's going to be attending court by Zoom, so he'll be there. So then it's not hearsay, because he could testify, yeah, I told the CASA advocate that. Yeah, watch your hearsay rules. But, you know, he would be attending via Zoom, so it's not hearsay. He can verify. The other thing is, has not spent a lot of family time with Lavender is another thing, because he told us that you want to state it objectively. All right. Next up, admittedly, he has a history of using inhalants.
Who is he?
Okay, right off the top. Like, and again, you're right. We're going to either use John Bass, or we're going to say the father. So either their name or their relation to the child. What else is wrong with this one?
I would say that he admitted instead of admittedly he has a history. I think I would just reframe it to be very clear what he said, because I wouldn't want anything to be misconstrued as an opinion.
Okay.
Also, I don't know if we can say that he has a history based on what we know. The only information we know about John Bass and inhalants is what he told us. And he said he did it once or something with the mom. Right. So.
And that brings us to what it says here. Admittedly, he has a history of using inhalants. That implies continued or current use.
Right.
So we want to be really careful. As Alex pointed out, he only told us he used it once, right? So we don't want to use words that imply continued or current use of. So how would we change this?
John Bass, or admittedly, John Bass discussed previous history of using inhalants.
I think you guys are making it more complicated than it needs to be. Go, dad admitted to using inhalants in the past.
Okay.
He did. He admitted to doing it once. And you could put once in there. Yeah, you're making it way hard. I think you guys are trying to just like substitute out words, and that's making it much more complicated.
Yeah, we're doing grammar.
That's exactly what I was doing.
We're in AP English right now.
And that's okay. It's the end of the day. I'm giving everybody lots of grace. It's all good. But that's it. Keep it simple. Like, dad admitted to using inhalants in the past. Dad had admitted to using inhalants once in the past. Done. We're not implying continued use. We're not implying current use, which would be interesting in a county lockup, but not unheard of. You know, there's a set fact. He admitted one time, right? So we can put that in there. All right, next one. Mr. Bass claims.
Just say Mr. Bass says or said.
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly how we would recommend. Mr. Bass said, Mr. Bass stated. The word claims can imply an alternate meaning. Because we're like, well, he claims he only used inhalants once. But it doesn't seem like we believe him at that point, and we don't know if it's true or not. So we don't want to add that in there because he may only really have used them once in the past. You see how that claims adds some kind of other potential implication to it. So we want to be really clear. All right, you ready? We're going to talk about Lavender now. Lavender seems to not be very engaged. What's wrong with it first?
Seems. We need to know, why are we seeming? Why is this a seeming? You know, that doesn't make any sense.
It's an opinion. He's
also not be very is not, like, we need to be very concise here. That's a lot of small words for a judge to look at and not read.
There you go. All right. So how would we rephrase this one? What would we do with this one?
Lavender is quiet and cries at night.
I love the fact that you went to fact-based. That's exactly what we want to do. Describe the behavior using your words. Lavender does not interact unless you speak to her first. Lavender does not look you in the eye when she speaks to you. Lavender has not made a great many friends at the school at this point, right? I'm adding simple sentences. Now we're getting the idea she's kind of not talking to anybody. She's not interacting. She's not interested in television. I'm adding some stuff in here, but like, we're getting the impression of like, there's something going on here. Maybe we should be concerned, or these are behaviors. You want to include your directly observed behaviors as opposed to your opinion about what those behaviors mean. If we describe what we see, the judge can draw their own conclusion. Okay. Lavender sometimes ignores the foster mother and doesn't listen to her when she is talking. Oof.
Think exactly what you said, Cheryl. I would instead say Lavender doesn't look her foster mother in the eye and foster mother believes she is not listening when she's speaking. Just something about that, because she's not listening. The foster mother believes this. So we'd have to reframe it as that fact.
And I'm also going to point out here we have pronouns her and she. I could potentially read this as Lavender sometimes ignores the foster mother and doesn't listen to the foster mother when the foster mother is talking. I could read it as ignores the foster mother and doesn't listen to the foster mother when Lavender is talking. You know, there's two different things right there. We want to be super clear and super precise. So this is one of those times we really, really, really need to make sure we know who we're talking about. Now we can deduce what's going on, but we don't want to have to. Okay, the foster mother states that she has to call her time after time to get her attention. This is basically the exact same one we just did. So I'm going to skip to the next one. This is not the best foster placement for Lavender.
That's an opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And it might be the best one.
Well,
I will,
but
I will.
I think we can say though that Lavender has been in the foster home for 3 weeks and has cried every night.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that statement, you know, if we really do believe this isn't the best foster placement for her, here we'd want to explain, you know, why
Right.
we're thinking that without saying it. And then in the recommendations, we would say, you know, CASA Advocate recommends I don't know what the recommendation would be, but reevaluate the placement or something like that.
Right. Because we want to
And
make
again,
the culture.
and Lavender asked for her grandmother and her aunt every day.
Yeah, you guys are getting it 100%. This is an opinion. The biggest thing is there are going to be times where you do not think it is a good foster family and child match. What you want to do is exactly what you were just all talking about, is you want to describe, you might, CASA Advocate recommends that a new placement be considered for the child. And then you're listing out all your reasons, or a specific, you name someone specifically, you know. That's what we're going to do. All right, perfect. It is back to our Texas case, which we're going to watch for a few minutes, and it's not super long today, so that's good. And then we're going to talk a couple things.
Kathy, I'm so glad to see you at this hearing. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Oh,
Everything's
are you
good.
really?
Mom,
You are
yeah.
good?
Mom.
Hey,
Hey. Oh,
I miss you so
I
much.
miss you too. So am I gonna get to come live with you again? Me and Robert? Maybe Rose, like old times?
Baby, you're gonna be living with Carol for a little while because I gotta take care of some things, okay? I don't expect you to understand, and I didn't want you to find out this way, but
I just want to live with you, that's all I want.
I know, but I'm not even gonna be able to take care of you for a little while, and you have to understand me. This is just one last thing.
So you don't want me anymore? Is that what it is?
That is not true. That is not... Ben!
Good morning, everyone.
I'm going to pause it here. One of the things you want to look at is that anger is very normal. It's going to be hard on everybody, but he's doing everything he can. He's not ready to face. Keep in mind that these kind of things can happen at court, outside of the court, things like that. It is not uncommon at all. I had to just tilt this so I could see my second screen. So don't be surprised.
Everyone, the court will call cause number 67432 in the interest of the Harrison Price children here in the 499th Judicial District Court of the San Gabriel County, Texas. We do have present with us here today representing the department, Mr. Britton, our county attorney. Our caseworker, Ms. Greenberg, is back with us with her supervisor, Ms. Dossett. We're happy to have Ms. Jackson and her supervisor, Ms. Ott, back from the CASA program. Ms. Duke is here in her representation of the children, and we're very happy to have been with us again here today. The mother, Ms. Price, and Ms. Langsley, her attorney, are present with us. Ms. Hill is with us again today as well. At this time then, ladies and gentlemen, would you please raise your right hands and to be sworn at this time. Each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you give before this court today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
We are here today for our second permanency hearing in this particular case. Ms. Price, the state of Texas gives us 1 year only to resolve the matters that are before this court today. If those matters have not been resolved at the end of that 1 year period, your parental rights are subject to being restricted or terminated. Do you understand that warning that I've given to you?
Yes.
The end of that 1 year period is November 31st of this year. We are here for our second permanency hearing, and at this time we are going to hear from our caseworker as to how things have been proceeding in the case. So Ms. Greenberg, what is it that you have to report to us at this time?
Your Honor, Rose has made some progress, but she continues to have significant delays. Her foster parents, though, report that she's very needy, but they are continuing to engage in ECI services and therapy for Rose. They are very bonded with her and attached with her and would like to see her remain in their home. Rose's biological mother, Miss Price, who's with us today, has not visited with Rose since the status hearing, and neither has Ben or Robert.
All right, is Rose on any medications at this time?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
All right, and speaking of medications, that reminds me of an issue that we discussed previously in another hearing. Ms. Jackson, we had talked about medications for Ben. Would you like to go ahead and address that issue at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. Ben is still on the full dosage that he was originally placed on, and I have grave concerns about that. I think the therapy and maybe the family therapy that you had talked about would be something that we need to do, and we need to readdress assessing those drugs.
All right. Thank you. So it seems to me the most appropriate way for us to address that would really to be have a specific discussion about that at another time, and so we'll address that. The other thing I wanted to highlight from your report was Ben's court report, and do you want to discuss what happened there and where that is?
Well, I think Ben became very upset. He did have a court report for you, but I think he's thrown it away.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and talk and hear from you then, Ms. Hill, as to how things are going in the placement and how Ben's doing over there at your home.
I think things in general are going okay. We've had a bit of a problem with attitude lately, and what hasn't helped is that during Kathy's visitations, I feel that I'm undermined, my authority is undermined, and that doesn't help the situation. And the experience has not been good. I think she may have been using alcohol, drinking before coming. I'm saying this because I'm trying to be honest here and say what's going on. And because I do want what's best for Ben. Another problem we've had recently is Ben has stolen some money out of my purse a few times, and hasn't been a lot, but I feel like it's worth mentioning, and I'm hoping that that doesn't get worse.
So it's kind of putting you in the middle between Ben and his mom, having to supervise the visits.
Yes.
So that's something we'll address here in a little bit when we get to our orders. But let's go ahead and discuss what orders we can address at this particular time. Since we are at our second permanency hearing, mediation would be appropriate in this case, as we order in each one of our cases at this particular hearing. So the court will enter an order ordering the case to go to mediation prior to our final hearing, which is our next hearing. Mediation is a process by which all the parties get together outside of the courtroom and sit down and attempt to work out an agreement for final orders without having to have someone make the decision for them. So we're going to ask that you participate in that process, Ms. Price. You can discuss exactly what that means with your attorney, and Ms. Langsley can explain that to you.
Judge, can you add to the orders that if she is an inpatient, that she be released to attend mediation?
Right, so we'll definitely put within the court's order for mediation a requirement that she be released from the facility without harming her chance of going back for that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. All right, very good. So we've discussed that. Also, please be familiar that our next setting is our final merits setting, and that, of course, we do have our typical discovery control plan in place. Please refer to that before we come back to court. Now, we know that we had a 6-month monitored return of the child, Robert, to his father, and we have closed that portion of our case by the orders that we have previously entered, and we will address those then again outside of court. So that portion of our case then can be closed at this time. I think under the circumstances, we need to make an extra effort that we can follow up with visitations then between the mother and Ben, but I think under the circumstances, it's not going to be able to be occurring at the aunt's home based on what we've discussed previously, and I talked to Ben before about family counseling and the counseling that he's participating in, so maybe there's a way for you, Ms. Greenberg, through the department to arrange those visitations around the counseling.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so those will be the orders of the court here today. We'll recess here in just a bit, but before we do, I want to speak to you just one more time, Ms. Price. This will be the last time I see you before we get to our final hearing. And of course, we've already ordered you to attend mediation, and you're going to discuss that with your attorney. We've had a lot of time go by in this particular case, and we know we're getting very close to the end of the case. And so your behavior from this point forward is very critical as to the determination as to whether you're going to have your children returned to your care or not. It's imperative that you go into inpatient as soon as possible. Do your best to do what you're supposed to before you get in there. When you're in inpatient, work very hard, and hopefully we'll have a good result at the end of this case. Stay in contact with your attorney, stay in contact with your caseworker, and when we come back to the final hearing then, hopefully we'll have a good outcome. Do you understand all those things I've explained to you?
Yes.
Very good. Now, here in just a second, we're going to go ahead and...
Okay, and so I want to stop us there because the rest of the stuff is Texas only. 3 different children, 3 different outcomes. Ben, no, Robert. Robert has been reintegrated with his dad. That's not uncommon because you had a dad that could be there. Rose is struggling. Obviously, probably some fetal alcohol syndrome potentially. And right now, Ben is in a kinship placement. So 3 different children. We're looking at 3 potential different outcomes right here. Remember, they have a year in Kansas as long as there's progress being made. Sorry, I've been trying to answer work emails at the same time. As long as progress is consistent progress is being made, they will not necessarily slam it down. But like we were talking about earlier, once you hit 15 out of 22 months and out of home, 15 of 22 months in out of home placement, there is a presumption of unfitness. Typically, judges are not going to want to immediately go right to, all right, that's it. We've met that standard and that's it. We're terminating. They don't want to do that. But we're watching this unfurl, and now she knew she only had a year, and she is just now 9 months into the case about to go into rehab. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes it takes the absolute, all right, we're approaching whether we're going to find reintegration is no longer a viable option before parents really wake up. I have actually seen parents where reintegration has been found no longer viable, and we are about to go to the termination hearing, and they realize that it's real and they're going to potentially lose their children. And then all of a sudden they will start working that case plan like you wouldn't believe. Because it's almost like they didn't believe it was going to happen. And now that they see it's about to happen, they start to work the case plan. So I always want to make sure I bring these things up. It's why the video is good, because you kind of get to see things and we kind of get to talk about situations that don't typically come up in training, so to speak. And I want you all to be as prepared for how it's going to be in court as much as possible. Questions on anything we went over this week, the videos? All right. Well, I appreciate how interactive everybody is. I appreciate how much you guys jump in, and boy, man, when Barbara said it got complicated, you guys, I could see it on faces. I could hear it in tones when that case went askew. Prepare yourselves. That can happen. It's as you find that kind of information out when you're just talking to people, you know, trying to figure out what the child needs. We realize maybe she doesn't need a lot of other stuff as much as she needs some cultural stuff. So, all right. That being said, I will send out an email tomorrow morning. It will be with the pre-work for next week. And we only have 2 more Tuesday sessions after this one. And then this portion of your training will be over. So, we're coming up on the end, and some of our cases are going to start to get more and more complicated. One of my favorite / least favorite cases is coming up next week. We will spend a lot of time dealing with that case because there's lots of intricacies. If you thought this one is bad, but we're going to keep our eye on Cheryl so she doesn't read ahead and have to keep secrets the whole time. You did amazing at it, though. I really have to say you did amazing. All right, I will see you all next week. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Stay cool during the 100-degree weather.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.